Good evening and welcome to Energy Matters, presented by New Jersey Policy Institute. I'm your host, Jeanette Hoffman. Thank you for joining us. When it comes to energy policy, things are heating up in the Garden State, and not just because it's summer. Take a look at your recent electric bills, which have gone up by 20% in the last month. You can see why energy affordability has been a leading issue in New Jersey. Tonight, we're excited to bring you a number of different viewpoints on this issue from our terrific guests. Trenton Council President Yazminelly Gonzalez joins us to talk about the impact of rising energy costs on the state's urban communities. Senate Republican leader Tony Bucco is here to discuss the Energy Master Plan and what the legislature should do to make energy more affordable. And Dr. Denise Anderson from the African American Chamber of Commerce will talk about giving more power to Black-owned businesses when it comes to energy policy. But first, Rosemary Becchi, president and founder of New Jersey Policy Institute, is here to fill us in on New Jersey's current energy landscape. Rosemary, thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me about New Jersey Policy Institute. Why did you found it, and what are your goals for the Garden State?
So this really goes back to my experiences. I have been working in public policy my entire career, and I had the great fortune of, when early in my career, of working at the United States Senate Finance Committee. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to co-author the 529 college savings plans. And that experience really taught me about the importance of bringing people together and convening people and talking about ideas and really getting input and incubating those ideas and really turning them into something. And so, I very much want to do that same thing for New Jersey. I think that there is great opportunity here. And I think that this is a real opportunity to bring people together, develop some thought leadership, and frankly, make real changes in our state.
Well, we're definitely in a big time of transition here in the Garden State in terms of policy. And along with the economy and education, New Jersey Policy Institute has made energy one of your three core policy platforms. So tell me why energy policy is so important for New Jersey families.
We really feel like that energy is so fundamental to the success of our state and our citizens. And so we thought that not only should we be thinking about the economy more generally and education, because it's such an important part of what we do, but we also need to be thinking about energy because it is so fundamental to our economy and to our daily lives.
It truly is, and it definitely adds up to costs when energy costs are high and everything, from our daily life to heating costs to grocery store bills. And looking at our state's current energy master plan, you've been very vocal in your criticism that the Murphy administration has prioritized some really unrealistic green mandates and limited the generation of major energy sources, such as natural gas. What do you think has been the result of these policy decisions?
Frankly, I think these policy decisions have been disastrous, and I have been very vocal about it. It's made our state unaffordable. Our energy supplies are unreliable. And so we really need to make sure that we are putting forth policies, that are helpful to New Jerseyans.
Speaking of affordability, as you know, we're facing an affordability crisis in New Jersey. And the recent 20% electricity rate that we just experienced, it impacts everyone, every single senior, business, and family, especially during these summer months. So what policies can state legislators enact to make energy more affordable here in New Jersey?
Absolutely, these policies have been disastrous. And as you pointed out, we are going to see big increases in our energy costs. And whether our state delays it temporarily, it's coming. And so what we really need is policies that amplify and encourage diversity and energy abundance, so that it is truly affordable for New Jerseyans.
And how do you see traditional fuels like natural gas, which makes up about 75% of our current energy generation, how do you see that fitting into a balanced, reliable energy plan for New Jersey's future?
So natural gas is fundamental to an energy plan, and again, as I pointed out, diversity is fundamental, and so we need to make sure that we are encouraging the development of multiple supplies of energy, so that we don't become reliant on just one source, because that could be dangerous and costly to our citizens.
And speaking of, security, we live in New Jersey here, but we don't live in a bubble. So with everything that's happening in the Middle East, I have to ask you about energy independence. It's become a critical issue, not just for economic reasons, but for security reasons as well. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, no, energy is so fundamental to our national security. And again, it is so important that we are encouraging domestic production of multiple sources, because we're finding out that we can't rely on the rest of the world all of the time. And so we've got to be able to have our own sources of energy. And we can't have one source like the governor wants us to have. His master plan is sending us down a pathway that's going to be destructive to our state, and it's going to create unreliable sources. And so we really need to be encouraging energy policies that really advocate for diversity and abundancy and reliability.
Well, we look forward to talking with you again. Thanks so much for coming, Rosemary.
Thanks for having me.
Our next guest is Trenton Council President Yazminelly Gonzalez. Thanks so much for joining us, Council President.
Thank you, Ms. Jeanette, for having me and inviting me here today with you.
You recently wrote an op-ed in the Trentonian that made a really compelling case about how New Jersey's energy policy is overlooking the needs of urban communities. Can you talk about some of the impacts that high utility prices are having on residents in Trenton and other New Jersey cities?
Yeah, so for most of us here, the impact on the high energy costs now, it's affecting us more in the low and middle class cities, particularly like Trenton, where we're pretty much predominantly low income. And it's affecting us because most families today are living paycheck to paycheck. And that's not just low income families, that's also middle class families that we're all kind of making ends meet. And so for me, I feel like it's causing a huge burden on our families. It's a financial strain for them. As we all know, some people have to make tough decisions, and um, it's either paying your bills, paying your rent, or putting food on the table. And so some people, where I have seen personally in Trenton, is that you have some people who may not be able to pay their utility bills right away. And so their electricity is cut off, and they're without power for some time. Until they can get another paycheck or until they get the funds to pay those things. So it's a huge burden on our families here in the city of Trenton and surrounding urban areas.
Well, I can certainly understand that. And I know that you're also a teacher at the Trenton School District.
I
And
know, yeah.
I'm a mom of four, so I really appreciate what a tough job that is.
Cool, thank
But
you.
yeah, and listen, we can't expect kids to do well in school if their families are struggling to keep the lights on and the heat on. So, in what ways do you see these energy burdens intersect with other challenges that we may be having, like housing insecurity, access to healthcare, or food affordability?
So for me as a teacher, I see it firsthand, how it deeply affects our students' performance, also their well-being, concentration, focusing in school, a child's stability. It affects the child's stability and health when these things are occurring at home. Because one, as we all know, as children, when we were kids, you probably, listen to your parents and things like that. And so when you have to deal with not coming home and knowing if your lights will be on. It just it's a domino effect in school where they're not focused, they're not paying attention, and we have to be understanding of it. And then, of course, it does have a overlapping effect where it's a lack of healthcare, access to healthcare, food affordability, because all of these things come into play. If they cannot pay their utility bills, it is going to be hard for a family to, especially a vulnerable family, to be able to have affordability with their healthcare and other access and stuff. But like I said, it does directly affect their academics. And so it's just, sometimes you just have to be understanding of it. And it's always good to have teachers that understand where some of our children, especially in the city of Trenton and other low income areas, the challenges that they face with their families.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge affordability issue in New Jersey right now. What would you say to those who view our traditional energy systems like natural gas as incompatible with climate goals? How can policymakers address both concerns for the environment and affordability together?
So for me, I would feel like our policymakers need to meet us where we are. We care about the environment, and I'm sure low income families do too. But like I said, we have to make tough choices, and some of those choices are whether we keep the lights on, or have a cleaner or safer thing. And I'm not saying that our cleaner future is not important, because it's very important. However, we have to be able to bridge the gap where it's a gradual implementation, not just all of a sudden that they're, forcing us to do certain things where, some of our families at the end, we don't want to choose between the environment and affordability. We want both of them, correct? But we also need to gradually make this happen. And policymakers sometimes don't think about these urban areas, some of our low income families, and don't understand that we need to do it in a pace where it makes sense. Realistically, I understand the concerns and traditional energy systems like natural gas, and I understand all of that, and I understand our climate goals. However, and I know that they're necessary, but it's also about protecting our working families from energy insecurity. We want to make sure that they are. It's a smooth transition and a gradual transition.
And we're hearing a lot of talk about long-term energy planning with whoever is in the next administration and whoever the new governor may be and whatever that will look like. So last question to you. How can we make sure that policymakers don't leave behind communities that depend on gas furnaces and affordable energy from existing gas generation facilities?
So I would say pretty much, like I said, kind of meeting us where we are, making sure that we are a part of the decision making, that they are communicating with this community, including them in a conversation so that they can express their concerns, express what is really going on here in the city of Trenton, or other places. As like I said, policymakers often make these decisions without including our people. So why not come into the community and, I don't know, maybe have surveys, community discussions, whatever that may be, so that we can understand the people's day-to-day struggles and challenges, so that it's not just these decisions that are being made without having that input from the community, especially someone like a community as Trenton. Moving forward, we have to collaborate, ensure that our long-term planning actually reflects the on-ground needs of our city, of all of the cities who are, directly affected and, suffering from low income families. We have a lot of low income families here. And so, including Trenton, we depend on gas furnaces and affordability energy from existing gas infrastructures. But however, we need to have a transitional solution that is just gradual. And I would like for them to include us in their decision making. Just have our needs at the forefront when deciding to do certain things.
Well, you bring up a lot of great points, and we look forward to talking to you in the future about all these issues. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Council President. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Coming up next on Energy Matters, I'm joined by Senator Anthony Bucco to talk about New Jersey's skyrocketing electric rates. And we'll discuss power for minority businesses with Dr. Denise Anderson from the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. Welcome back to Energy Matters, presented by New Jersey Policy Institute. I'm your host, Jeanette Hoffman. I'm happy to be joined by Senate Republican leader Anthony Bucco, who represents New Jersey's 25th legislative district. Senator Bucco, thanks for joining us on a busy day in the State House to talk about energy affordability in the Garden State. I'm sure you're hearing from a lot of your constituents right now. The BPU recently approved a 20% rate increase on electric bills. In your opinion, was this rate hike preventable?
It was predictable and preventable. That much is absolutely clear. You know, the experts, the members of my Republican caucus in the Senate have been ringing the alarm bells for years now, saying that the governor's energy master plan was too aggressive and that it was putting ideology ahead of practicality, and that we would end up in a situation where New Jersey would not be able to meet its demand for electricity. And that's exactly what has happened. It was predicted, and we're here now as a result of it. We're seeing the results of this outrageous master plan that was so aggressive that it not only killed the supply side, but the demand side we knew was going to continue to increase. And as a result of that, New Jersey has now become a net importer of electricity. And that's why you're seeing these spikes.
Right, and those spikes took effect in June. And now, as a solution, the governor announced that the state is going to give all New Jersey households a $100 credit. Some may get a little bit more to offset this rate increase. But we've already had our first heat wave of the summer just recently. So I'm not sure how far that credit is going to go for most businesses and homeowners. So in your opinion, do you think this credit is providing adequate relief?
It's a Band-Aid. It really is. It's a Band-Aid. You know, I heard the governor today released a statement telling folks to try to keep their air conditioning at 80 degrees. You know, I mean, that's just an outrageous statement. You know, we heard during the hearings that the Senate and Assembly, the Joint Committee conducted on this energy crisis, we heard from the folks that said, you know, these high heat waves could affect people's health if they don't have the electricity to supply the air conditioning that they need to keep cool. So this is not only going to hurt people in their pocketbooks, but it's going to hurt their health as well. And we need to do everything we can as a state to try to get past this.
Yeah, and certainly our elderly and most vulnerable are at risk here when there's a chance of a heat wave. I have to ask you another question about these rate increases. There are some who've blamed the energy grid operator, PJM, for the increases in energy costs, while others say that it was the administration's decision to limit the supply of natural gas and other reliable sources of affordable energy. That was the reason why we were seeing the rate increases. So can you sort this out for me? Was it PJM's fault for the skyrocketing rate increases, or truly was it, you know, a supply and demand issue?
Look, you know, everybody tries to say that this is a complicated issue. I don't believe it is. I believe it is as simple as you just said. This is economics about supply and demand. And when your demand is so high that you cannot meet, when your demand is so high that you can't meet the supply within your own state, you're forced to buy off of the regional grid. You're buying from folks in Pennsylvania, in Ohio, and other states, and you're at the mercy of that auction. And as data centers and other high energy users begin to come online, you're going to see the demand increase even further. And unless New Jersey picks up on the supply side, we're going to be in even deeper trouble in the future. You know, everybody wants a clean environment. We all want a clean environment, but you have to be practical about how you get there. You know, you have to make sure that as we turn to renewable sources, we have enough energy in the system to meet the demand that's coming. And as AI continues to take hold and these data centers begin to pop up, We want that to drive our economy here in New Jersey. And if we can't supply the energy to those folks, they're going to go to other states. And that's going to be another loss for New Jersey, to our economy and for jobs. So we need to the governor needs to get this energy master plan in order. We need to start looking at natural gas, clean natural gas. The plants that have been mothballed need to be reopened. We need to look at nuclear energy to support our demand, and readjust our energy master plan to recognize what's actually happening on the ground.
So my last question for you would be, what are other states doing to that point that you just mentioned that New Jersey can follow to get our energy policies and prices back in check?
Well, listen, they are making it easier for folks to build natural gas energy plants. They're decreasing the red tape that goes into this, the permitting process. They're looking at all of these things to get these plants online as quickly as possible. Many of them never came offline.
Yeah.
One of the downsides to this thing is, while New Jersey was driving for a clean environment, we are now purchasing energy from Pennsylvania and Ohio, then they're producing their energy with coal burning plants. So, this whole theory of we're going to make the environment even better, we're not. We are actually promoting the burning of coal energy so that it can be supplied to us. That's what Pennsylvania and Ohio are still doing. And we need to make light of that. We need to make sure that our energy master plan, and I'm not advocating for coal, but I'm certainly advocating for clean natural gas and the nuclear generation that we've had here in the state, and that we've since lost one plant.
Yeah, well, there's definitely a lot more to talk about this issue. So we're going to have to leave it here, but we're going to have you back on again because energy affordability is going to be a major issue in the months to come. Thanks so much for joining us, Senator.
Thank you.
Our next guest is Dr. Denise Anderson, who is a board member of the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. Dr. Anderson, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So with over 80,000 Black-owned businesses in New Jersey, your chamber represents a really important component of our state's economy. Talk to me about some of the challenges facing the businesses you represent and what the impact of rising energy costs means in this current economic environment.
Yes, thank you so much. And so Black-owned businesses are more likely to operate in under-resourced communities, and therefore they're more vulnerable to the rising energy costs. And this is for really several factors. One, these businesses often have slimmer profit margins, less access to capital, and really fewer energy efficiency upgrades. And so this exacerbates the burden of rising utility costs. Black-owned businesses, for example, in the goods and services industry, such as retail, beauty, and food services, those businesses really have high energy needs. These businesses could be in leasing older buildings with poor insulation, or even outdated infrastructure, which can lead to higher utility costs. They have limited access to energy efficiency programs or even financing, which prevents them from making cost-saving upgrades. And the higher energy costs can mean the difference between staying open and shutting down.
You bring up some really important points. And we talk a lot about energy transitions. We all support a clean environment, but a recent study by the Progressive Policy Institute, showed that low-income communities are most at risk in an energy transition that phases out our traditional energy sources like natural gas due to rising costs. So with that being said, what is the Chamber's position on policies that mandate electric vehicles and mandate the electrification of buildings and at the same time ban natural gas for cooking and heating?
Yes, I appreciate the content of the Progressive Policy Institute study. When electric vehicles and the electrification of buildings are mandated at the same time that natural gas for cooking and heating are banned, Black businesses face higher upfront compliance costs. And so what are the costs to converting commercial kitchens, HVAC systems, and vehicles to electric? There are also productivity and quality challenges, such as slower heat up times for electric stoves, for restaurants, catering, and hair salon owners. You know, when I go to the hair salon, that dryer is on for 10 or 15 minutes before I need to get under it to make sure that it's hot, right? There's costly upgrades for construction and landscaping businesses who are reliant on, say, gas-powered equipment or transportation fleets. The problem of inadequate or lack of electric grid capacity, charging stations, and then building readiness for full electrification for Black-owned businesses in disinvested communities. And lastly, I'll say, coming back again to capital, is the oftentimes lack of rainy day capital when electricity demand results in utility rate pressure or electricity spikes.
Well, these are very important considerations that you bring up. So when deliberating these big changes to our state's energy policy, how can policymakers and elected officials ensure that the best interests of Black business owners are being considered going forward?
Yes, policymakers can ensure the best interests of Black businesses owners are being considered going forward, through a number of ways. The public-private transition grant programs or no and low interest loans for electrification. Policymakers can partner with community development financial institutions and, minority business support organizations like AACC&J to ensure awareness and accessibilities of these initiatives to Black business owners. They can offer free energy technical audits that ultimately culminate in cost-effective energy efficiency transition plans for businesses. So the how to do this with support. Policymakers could appropriate funds for electrification training programs for Black contractors and tradespeople, thereby creating jobs within the Black community impacted by the energy transition. We talked earlier about that all of nothing approaches, such as, the mandates and the simultaneous bans. And so implementing either phase-based compliance timelines, considering things like waivers or grandfathering some businesses under certain circumstances, and providing incentives for early adopters. We can invest in community microgrids in under-resourced communities. And last but certainly not least, conduct impact assessments on various businesses for proposed new electrification or clean energy mandates. And do this in an intentional way where Black business owners, chambers of commerce, and community-based organizations can be at the table to help co-design some of these policies to make sure that they are applicable and that they're fair.
And certainly the African American Chamber of Commerce should have a seat at the table. And I have to ask you, finally, New Jersey is facing a huge leadership transition with a new governor up for election in 2025, I should say. I know the Chamber is a bipartisan organization, but what kind of energy policies would you like to see from the next governor and the next administration to help support African American businesses?
Yes, thank you for that. So several of my responses to the previous question would definitely apply here. Mm-hmm. And I'll also add that there's some promising policies and programs that are happening right now, right? So I read just this week that the State Board of Public Utility has a rate mitigation plan with components such as deferred payments during summer months when utility rates are higher. The board approved additional assistance for low-income residents for the Residential Energy Assistance Program. So can we do something similar for small businesses? And lastly, I'll say the hope is that whoever is at the helm of the state come January 2026 will not just wipe the slate clean and start all over. It would be helpful to assess what is currently in place, keep what is working, embellish it and scale it if it's working to include small businesses, and also to address identified gaps with equitable policies and programs and services with funding, of course, behind them so that we can implement, we can scale, and we can really monitor for effectiveness and improved outcomes to include energy affordability for Black businesses.
Well, you leave a lot to be considered when it comes to the new transition in 2026. Thanks so much for coming on the show, and we'll certainly talk to you soon.
Thank you.
That does it for today. I'm Jeanette Hoffman. Thanks for watching.